If you're anything like me, you've probably met aspiring missionaries from your church or your school, maybe just the circles you're in, that are trying to get to the missions field today. They're trying to get there quickly. Now, when I was growing up and I was meeting these people wherever I did, I always felt like they were kind of in too much of a rush. It almost felt like they were rushing the job of getting overseas because they'd graduate college or they had just been married, maybe they just had a kid, and it felt like an inopportune time for them to pack up their entire lives and move overseas to some of the hardest places in the world. It just always seemed like a crazy idea to me. But here's the problem with my thinking back then. What I didn't realize is that these aspiring missionaries understood something about the Great Commission that I did not, and that is the urgency of the task at hand. When we talk about global missions, we're talking about a big task at hand. 40% of the world does not have access to the gospel. They don't have a way to know who Jesus is. And what that means is that 40% of the world doesn't even have the chance to call upon Jesus, to believe in him so that they might someday be saved. The problem at hand is clear. 40% is way too big of a number. But what we have to remember to think about is that this is an urgent task. So now think back with me to the people I mentioned earlier, the aspiring missionaries who are ready and willing to go overseas today. What's keeping them back? What was stopping them from going? Believe it or not, there's a lot of barriers that keep people from going overseas. And one of the largest ones is student debt. It might not sound like a big deal at first, but student debt is keeping the missionaries from answering the urgent task. The people who are ready and willing to go right now, today, are getting stopped by one thing, and it's their student debt from the degree that they had to earn in order to go overseas to the unreached. So what do we do about that? How do we remove the barrier of student debt for missionaries so that they can go today? I mean, if that's the last thing that's in their way, we should be doing everything we can to remove it, right? And that's why AIRO started the Go Fund, our student debt repayment program for missionaries going to serve amongst the unreached long term. Many of you have probably already heard about the Go Fund, and some of you are probably even donors. But what you may not have heard is all the stories that we have from our partners telling us about how impactful it was to have student debt removed from them. While we have plenty of stories about how impactful taking student debt away from missionaries has been, there's one quick one that I want to share with you in particular. 6 years ago, we had a couple apply for the Go Fund to have their student debt paid off as they were getting ready to head for the missions field. In our applications, we always ask the missionaries, how long would it take you to pay off your student debt? There's a lot of details, but we really want to know, how impactful is this for them to have the barrier removed? In their application on the question about what the significance of having their student debt removed would be, they truly wrote, "It is the barrier. There is just no way for us to go right now." So for this couple in particular, their student debt was the only thing holding them back. They were ready to go overseas. They had been trained. They had applied with an agency. This was the last thing, and it was going to delay them years from going. Another question that we ask in their application is about when they think they would have been able to go had they been paying their student debt off normally, and when they'd be able to go if we covered it entirely. And in this case, it's a pretty stunning difference. In their application, they wrote, "We would not have been able to go until 2024, basically right now, if they had paid off their debt normally." But here's the thing. They applied in 2018 and left for the field in 2019. A 5-year difference is a huge amount of time. That allows them to get there on the field sooner, start learning the language, start learning the culture, and getting to be a part of their area way sooner than they ever would have been able to. That's why it matters so much that we send people now. When people are ready and willing to go today, we have to do anything that we can to take the barriers out of the way and get them to the unreached. Stories like this one are exactly why we ask people to give to the Go Fund. You're not just giving to student debt repayment. You're not just giving to pay off some people's student debt. You're giving to get the gospel overseas years ahead of time, years before anyone would have ever had the chance to be saved. If you're a donor to the Go Fund, I want to personally thank you for your faithful investment in getting the gospel to the unreached years before it would have, through paying off the student debt for missionaries today. If you're not a donor, I would love to invite you to please go to the description below and click on Become a Rope Holder. At that link, you'll be able to hear all about what it looks like to give to missionaries going to the unreached. I'll leave you this. The task at hand is urgent. The nations need Jesus more than anything and more than ever before. The doors might not always be open, and that's why we send today as best we're able. No matter the role that you play in missions, whether you're a sender or you're a goer yourself, we all share the same joy. God's glory praised through Jesus among the nations.